Dads are most ordinary men, turned by love into heroes, adventurers, storytellers, and singers of song. This quote by Australian poet Pam Brown really seems to capture some of the essence of how amazing dads can be. Hey, my name is Mark Duggin, and I'd like to invite you to join us here for this video. In this video, I've asked Bob Mumford and our chairman here of our Life Changers board, Pieter van Niekerk, to join me in sharing some thoughts about our dads and just about Father's Day, as we've got Father's Day approaching here in just a couple of weeks. So, thanks for being here, and we hope you enjoy.
We want to talk about fatherhood and natural and spiritual fathers. And my own testimony, like hundreds and thousands, is speaking out of a father wound. And my mom and dad divorced, and the pain that follows divorce is always more than anybody can measure. And the judge says to me, "Are you required now to choose to go with your father or your mother?" And I chose to go with my mother because I thought she needed me to help her. And my dad walked across and said to me, "Son, I understand your choice, but you will live long enough to understand a degree of mistake." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I could tell you the history and very ugly relational stuff. And one time he was trying to find me, and the tensions in the marriage was unbelievable. And so he was asking me questions, and I was giving him all the wrong answers. And finally he stopped the car, put me out of the car, and left me on the side of the road. And I know he regretted that for the rest of his days because he was so injured and he reacted. So then I came to the Lord, and I loved him more than anybody could know. I had given myself illegally to my mother. I had neglected my father. The injury was, he was injured, I was injured. And God the Father began to deal with me about finding him and loving him. I went to see him. It was very, very painful, very ugly, tension. And I finally could get out of my mouth, "Dad, I came to forgive you and ask for your forgiveness." And I could hardly do it, and he could hardly do it because of the depth of the father wound. Please hear when I say the father wound is very deep in most of us, very, very deep. And second time was about 8-9 months later. I traveled down. He lived in Florida at the time. I traveled down and spent 2-3 days with him and did my very best to find him and allow him to find me. Again, his injury and mine were just profound. And he was needing me deeply. I was needing him urgently, but the pain did not allow us to find each other the second time. The third time, another, almost a year, I was determined to find him. The third time, and he was ready, and I was ready. And I went to his home. He's living alone. He was married again and divorced a second time. And when I entered the room, he was waiting for me, and fell on my neck, and I fell on his, and the Lord healed something very deeply in both of us. Out of that journey, I have tried to impart to the body of Christ how badly, how urgently we need a proper relationship with our Father, earthly and heavenly. I'm telling you before God, Jesus Christ needed his Father. Bob Mumford needed his Father. And I'm asking you to be aware of how badly you need your Father, male or female, however old, however much the damage, how deep the father wound. I'm asking you, get the courage, and if it's possible, wash the father wound and get reconciled with your earthly father. However much he is a failure is not the issue. You are honoring the office of a father, and it will change your life.
My dad passed away in 2009, shortly before his 80th birthday. And I can tell you his impact on what I understood and expected from life really outstripped every other influence. I mean, friends, school, teachers, family, everything by far. I don't mean to suggest that he was some kind of saint or without fault, far from it. But as my hero, as a symbol of what it means to be a man, what it means to stand up for yourself, and what it means to stand up for your loved ones. Just in that example alone, it kind of filled in all the missing pieces for me. But that's not even the most important part. I was privileged enough to see my dad become what I would call a Christ follower, not just a believer. I mean, I watched him being transformed, and even as a child that didn't quite get everything, I understood that something profound had happened to this man. Now, to understand what I mean, I have to give you a little bit more context here. My father was a police officer, the commanding officer, in fact, of a rural county or a district in South Africa at that time. And he wore the burden and the posture of law enforcement like a second skin. The men that served under him offered their salute, not just because of his rank, but because he commanded their respect. Whenever he was around, there was just no doubt about who's in charge. But at his funeral, those very same men that served under him decades before, they pitched up and wept. Now, imagine our shock as a family member when this man of such stature, discipline, and presence encountered Christ, not in church, not at some revival meeting, just by reading the scriptures, unaided and coming to the persuasion that Christ had died his death and became his resurrection. That's simple. I don't think he was able to articulate a single doctrine, even if he tried. But what we saw is that he started loving people. I mean, our dodgy family members, alcoholics, broken cops, criminals, my mom, the children, everyone. My mom actually nearly divorced him because she no longer recognized this man. He would slip away and sit under a street lamp at night to read his Bible, so she would not give him an earful about having lost his mind to religion. She even called the local Dutch Reformed minister to come talk some sense into him. Now, when the dominee, that's what we call the minister in Afrikaans, then pitched up and did not appear to understand my dad's testimony of how he came to this assurance of his salvation without even a whiff of sarcasm or judgment or offense, my dad asked him with genuine amazement, how is it that you as a spiritual leader understand nothing of this. I can tell you 1,000 stories of how as children we lay on the grass at night with him, staring up at the stars through his sniper scope. And how, not surprisingly today, I'm an amateur astronomer and astrophotographer. I can recall as a 7 or 8-year-old, I spent hours with him reciting entire passages of criminal law as he was studying for his promotion to a senior officer position. I remember going with my dad to firearm training and how today I suffer from profound hearing loss. Safety just wasn't a thing back then. So interestingly, because of my father's influence, I guess, both my brothers and I started our careers as cops, and their wives served as police officers, and even my mom worked as a clerk at the local police station. Finally, I remember quite vividly the honor and the joy of his burial, where I had to convey his heartfelt apology to those that attended for interrupting their daily lives with something as trivial as death. His life was simple but profound, humble but powerful. If he was here in person, I know for sure he would be protesting vigorously lest anyone should think of him more highly than they ought to. So I understand. Life is complex, right? I mean, not everyone has the privilege of growing up with a father, let alone one they would aspire to become like. Perhaps you're a young new father without any real reference point of what on earth it means to be a father, to act like one. It's one of the toughest jobs on earth, after all, hands down. So I can tell you this, like it was for my own father, so it is for me. By watching and following the way Christ loved and related to his Heavenly Father, you will find all the guidance, all the courage, all the wisdom, all the strength you need. You just get out there and do it. Much love, and hope to talk to you soon again.
My dad was an adventurer. He loved to camp, he loved to hike, backpack, climb, go scuba diving, go snow skiing, whitewater rafting, canoeing. Whatever adventure he could find, he definitely wanted to be a participant. This is one of the things I loved about my dad. My name is Mark Duggin, and we're approaching Father's Day, and I just wanted to share a few thoughts and introduce you to my dad. In addition to being an adventurer, one of the things that I always knew about my dad was his work ethic. And whatever he was doing, whether it was in his professional capacity as a high school teacher, or later in his career as a high school administrator, or around the house, or at church, I always knew that my dad had a great work ethic. He was always busy serving and tending to things and taking care of what needed to be taken care of, and that was imparted to me and no doubt my sister as well, and I'm really grateful for that. Another thing that's really true for those that knew my dad was that he never met a stranger. I can remember countless times as a child going to the store for what I know should have been 2 or 3 minutes for just a few items would inevitably turn into a multi-hour excursion as Dad ran into people he knew, and conversation would ensue. Another thing about my dad is that he loved God, and he wanted to share it with whoever was around, and he wanted to share that joy and impart that life to whoever was around, and that they would also be participants in what he had experienced himself. When I think about my dad being an adventurer, I really have fond memories of the car that we used to ride in. This was a 1971 Firebird. It was the only new car my dad ever bought. Had vinyl seats, no air conditioning, of course crank windows, and I have so many fond and good memories in that car. Lots of road trips across the country, many trips to Colorado for skiing and backpacking as we would cram all of our gear inside and strap the skis to the top. Just lots of fantastic memories in that car. After my dad passed away, I was cleaning out the car and just getting it ready for my mom to sell. And as I was going through the glove box, I found this map. This is a Kentucky-Tennessee map of 1970 vintage. And as soon as I saw it, it brought back so many memories from my childhood. I remember this map always being in the glove box, and I would thumb through it, I would open it, I would look at it. All through the early 80s, whenever we were in the car, I would often look at this map, and not only to see where we were going, just because I was interested in what this map held and its contents, and was just fascinated by maps always, and still am today. I really enjoy them, and I think a lot of that comes from my dad and just the prepping of adventure, of always looking at the map. Where are we going? How do we get there? What's the best way? And I have this on my shelf, one of my bookshelves now, and every time I see it, it brings me a whole lot of joy to see this and just remember all those times with my dad. When I think of maps, there's a certain element to the trip planning process of a guide, and Dad was really that for me. He was a guide in so many different ways. When I think about a guide, I think about someone who goes before you, who knows the path that you're about to travel, who has lived enough life to bring some wisdom to bear on a situation. And Dad really did that, often through stories, often through funny anecdotes, not really telling people so much what to do, or me or my sister, but giving an insight, giving a piece of wisdom that may help us make a better decision if we were to go without that. Another thing when I think about my dad is just the pure joy of friendship. In addition to being that guide, he was really my friend. As adults, we just became such good friends, and we were friends always through, but just as adults, that just matured. And I've got to imagine that one of the deep joys of raising children and seeing them come into adulthood is becoming friends with them. My wife and I are still in the process of raising our kids, but I know that as we sow into them, that the joy of that friendship will be kind of full later in life, and I look forward to those days as well. In friendship, I think that we have this certain joy in knowing that Christ has made himself available to us to be friends. In the book of John, in chapters 15 to 17, Jesus really shares a lot of insight into why he's here, who sent him. And he says if we know him, then we know his Father. He says his Father sent him, and that they are of one mind. They are operating out of the same relational place. It really is a relational kingdom that he came to share about and live life from. And out of that space, he invites us to know him and be friends with him in that way. And I think one of the coolest things is in John chapter 16, verse 27, he says that Father himself loves us, that the Father himself is our friend. And I think that that really is that relational kingdom. He's expressing something of relationship that is the fullness that we are all invited to walk in. So as you think about your earthly father, as we were at Father's Day, or when you think about God as Father, I just want to leave you with this quick blessing. May you know the fullness of love of God as your Father, and may you know the deep joy of being a friend of God.